Hello, and welcome to Next Gen, October 30th, 2020. My name is Tom Reynolds. I'm the president of the Reynolds Group, and I will be your host for the next 45 minutes. Given this background, I'd like to say happy Halloween Eve and welcome to Next Gen, a peer group founded 20 years ago to support manufacturing, distribution, and technology companies. Our mission is to help business leaders adjust, leverage, and thrive. My background is manufacturing and software development. I use this experience to solve marketing problems and create better sales opportunities for my clients, not just leads. My business partner is Hema Day. She manages the SEO to sales part of our company. It's a highly focused, financially driven, white glove digital marketing service. Helping me today is Linda Feinholtz. She will be your helping me with questions and moderate those sorts of things. As well, and she's a business growth strategist and coach, as well as a good friend. Also, we've got Kenneth Dunn, my fabulous communication director, who helps me put my clients' words to paper. Okay, so we welcome questions, but I'd ask you to put them into chat for us. And so Dave will answer them in a group, and he's willing to stay as long as you have questions. He will stay and answer them. The speaker today is Dave Watt. He works with companies and firms to reduce cybersecurity risk and exposure and avoid expensive and embarrassing breaches. The topic today is cybersecurity risk and opportunities. Hackers are innovating every day to steal your data or money. It risks. So everyone is a target, and everybody needs to think about cybersecurity and make it part of their business plan today and in the future. With that, bam, take it over, Dave.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Yes, I'm the Chief Information Security Officer, Virtual Chief Information Security Officer for a lot of companies through my firm, Anovo InfoSec, which stands for Information Security. So I'm going to try to cover a lot of material, but I think it's all pretty relevant to any size business. We work with small to medium-sized businesses all the way up to Fortune 500 companies. So let me start with talking about, let's talk a little bit about who's attacking. So a lot of times people, and I just made a joke about this earlier, think that it's some hacker is some, you know, if you're old enough, Matthew Broderick in War Games sitting on in his bedroom trying to attack, hopefully not the Defense Department like in the movie, but perhaps attacking you. It's not that way anymore. Professional criminals are people that are attacking you. They are playing a numbers game. It's not you. So a lot of times people, I often hear this, well, I don't think it would be me. I don't have anything that would be something that someone would really want. We'll get to that in a minute. But I will tell you this. It's like someone walking through a parking lot and they're going to steal a car and they're just going to try every door of every car in the parking lot. And if your door is unlocked, guess what? It's going to be your car. So professional criminals, it's a numbers game to them. It's volume in the number of systems. They are looking to get systems that they can use or capitalize on to either reach other systems, which we'll get to in a little bit in a minute, or extort money out of your firm specifically. So it's not just what money they can get from you, but it's also how can they utilize your resources to get to someone else. They are literally the face of organized crime, and they are more profitable now than any other organized crime ring in history. You think about it, who in the world would take the risk to walk into a bank these days with a mask on, haha. Anyway, but walk into a bank these days and try to steal something, steal money when they can sit in an office and do it all day without the risk of anyone coming up and attacking them. They're often, not always, but they're often in other countries where there are fewer or no laws making this activity illegal. And yet they still have access as if they're next door to you. So they're a threat our country has not adequately prepared for. By the way, no country has. And it's up to you to secure your firm's most important assets, your data, your money, your reputation, et cetera. So let's talk a little bit about what do they want? Why in the world are they attacking, and why would they be attacking me? Always assume you have something cyber criminals want. One, obviously, is money. Most firms think that all cyber criminals are always after big money, but that's not always the case. You don't need fame or millions of dollars in the bank to become the victim of cybercrime. Many attacks are aiming for smaller amounts on a large scale basis or for ransom payments. They can do anything from getting you to buy a gift card on the really, really low end of what it could cost you, or gift cards and send them to them, all the way to, I've seen them become what's called a man in the middle attack, where they take over your accounts receivable and they put up a fake website and they start collecting your money. They notify your clients and they start collecting your money instead of you collecting it. It's very easy for them to do that. So it can range from on the money perspective. And many cyber criminals, most of them rely on automated attacks that seek out and compromise any vulnerable system. So they can either sell this access to specialists that they know how, that those specialists know how to monetize the information your firm has, or they might try a broader approach, as most firms are concerned with extended downtime. So if you have, this can affect small businesses or large businesses, but if you get ransomware and literally every machine becomes encrypted within an hour or so, then literally your office can be shut down. You have to wipe every machine. You could be shut down for 2 weeks, and depending on your IT. And if you are someone that, imagine that if you're a CPA and it's your busy season, or you're an attorney and you're in the middle of a big trial case or something, so then they're going to try to put pressure on you to pay ransom. And it can be I'm sure you read about it all the time. It can be from a small ransom up to millions and millions of dollars. Also, once a system is compromised, it can be used to distribute malware to it can also be used to send spam or help launch a denial of service attacks, which basically brings a website down, or be sold to do all the aforementioned. So even if they don't get money from you, if you have compromised systems, and if they can get into one machine, then they can compromise a lot of machines. And by the way, you will not know that your machines have been compromised. It's not going to show up. It's not like the malware of old days where you'd see something acting weird. Then they can actually utilize your resources to help them launch attacks on other firms, because then they can use it and it looks like it's coming from a United States address. Cyber criminals also may lift personal data from vulnerable systems. That's social security numbers, email addresses, phone numbers, anything they can get. And then they can use that for identity theft and fraud. And they can also get, even a username and password is really valuable. And you may say, well, why does that matter if they don't want what I've got? Because they might be able to go and use it to get into your LinkedIn. Then they know all your contacts, or they might use it to get into your other social media. Or they're just going to sell it to someone that actually does that for a living, goes out and tries to launch attacks on you through those things. So it's very specialized. I want you to really that's a good big takeaway. It's not one criminal doing all the stuff against you. A lot of them just are gaining access, setting it up so they can then sell that access to someone else that can do something much more nefarious. I want to give you a quick example of what can happen. So actually, I'll tell you what, we'll wait till we talk about small and medium-sized businesses. I'll give you the example then. Let's talk a little bit about IT before we go on and talk about what you should be asking your IT department or your outsourced IT company. So information technology, IT, is not the same thing as information security. They're apples and oranges, okay? IT, to summarize, is really focused on making all your systems available and useful and productive. Information security is focused on restricting access based on a business need. I didn't say restrict productivity. I said focus on restricting access based on a business need. Most firms I come across have way too much access granted to everybody in the firm, and they don't have the adequate controls in place to figure out even what's going on. So their information security plan is basically hope and keep their fingers crossed. So we don't want to do that. So let's talk a little bit more about the difference between IT and IS. So IT is they're gonna work on your technology strategy, your roadmap, your budget. They're gonna make sure your network's working great, all your business apps are working. They might be helping you with your business intelligence. They obviously want to keep everything running with user support. Information security is going to do a strategy, but it's a security strategy, which is different. A security roadmap, which is very different. It wants to get you from wherever you are now to wherever you need to be, and also work with you on your budget for all that to make sure it's, it's actually realistic. And then you also want information security to be doing threat monitoring for you and operations monitoring for you. They're going to also help you write your information security policies. That's plural. There's more than one. Okay. All your procedures, change controls. That means anytime you change something, you have to evaluate how it's going to affect your risk. Okay. And then also it's going to help you be ready for an incident. I wish I could say that you could there's some magic bullet and you're going to be able to say, I won't have any, no chance of a breach or no chance of a successful attack. That is not the case. So you need to have a plan for incident management and incident response. You also need to have incident management and event correlation. That's tracking every single thing that's happening on the network, and looking like someone getting a wrong password here, but a few times may not normally be something that you would think was bad. But if at the same time you're seeing attacks at the very same second on your firewall as that's happening, then you'd want to correlate those events. And that's what a security department's going to be able to do for you. And then what I was referring to is also you need to work with one to make sure that you're ready for an incident response. There's things you need to do in an exact order in order to protect yourself legally and also to have the highest chance of recovery. And then they're responsible for securing not only your on-premise stuff, but your cloud resources and assets. So what are questions you should go out and ask your IT department? This could be your IT person, it could be your IT department for larger clients. And it could also be larger firms. It could also be you have an outsourced IT company. So first question is, who is in charge of your security? I'll give you a hint. It's not IT. I can't tell you how many firms we start working with. I'm like, well, so how are you managing your security? Bob down there, he's fantastic. We've had him for 20 years. He's great. He's managing our security. Now, Bob, I don't know Bob. Bob might be the best IT person on the planet, and he might be great, and he might be doing a lot of things for for security, but it's rarely is going to be something where that one person, you cannot abdicate things for security to an IT department. You might be able to delegate some things after you've decided what needs to be done and how it's going to be measured, but you shouldn't abdicate it. There's a big difference between abdicating and delegating. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So you want to ask your IT department, how are you measuring risk and cyber hygiene? Okay. What I mean by cyber hygiene, you have to, just like you have to brush your teeth every day and hopefully shower and whatever else you do to keep up your own personal hygiene. Otherwise, you're going to be a mess. Same thing with cybersecurity. There's a lot of things you need to be doing, and some things have to be done every second, some are every minute, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, annually, etc. If you don't do all the things, then your security is going to be a mess also. So what you specifically want to ask your IT department is, by what commonly recognized security framework are you measuring our risk and our cyber hygiene? And I use the word measure intentionally. So when you measure something, you get an exact answer. It's not well, we're kind of doing this, we're kind of doing that. No, hopefully if you're baking a cake, you're going to use an exact measurement if you want to get the same results every time. Same thing in cybersecurity. So we want to know what framework they're measuring you against, and also your cyber hygiene, measuring your risk and cyber hygiene against. If the answer is a Homer Simpson blinking, empty stare, then you might want to then investigate further, because it's probably most IT departments that we first come across are not, unless it's a really, really, really large firm, are not even aware of some of these frameworks, much less measuring and aligning you with those frameworks. So not only do you want to align yourself with that, but how are you going to demonstrate alignment with the commonly recognized framework that you choose, okay, to the C-suite? We'll talk more about the specific frameworks of which you should use, by the way, in a minute. How are you demonstrating alignment with that? You have to report that to the C-suite, and for a small firm, it could be the managing partner or the president or the owner of the company. For larger companies, they could have their own chief information security officer, or it could be the operations COO or CEO, et cetera. These people at the ownership or C-level suite should be making the decisions for how you're going to manage your security, and IT should help you and advise you on how they can implement the things that you've chosen to do. Okay. You also need to be ready at any time to be able to demonstrate your alignment with a framework, commonly recognized framework, to outside auditors. We work with a lot of law firms, and law firms, we have a lot of SMB law firms. We're talking, some of them are 20 people total at the firm. Some of them might be 100 people, but a lot of them are not very large law firms compared to the national ones, and yet they have clients that are Fortune 500 or 1,000 clients. So, and they're doing, or if you're in Los Angeles, you have clients that could be Disney or Netflix or whatever. Okay, all those large companies, if they're Fortune 500 or Fortune 1,000, they're going to want to be able to, their cybersecurity rolls downhill. So they'll be able to demonstrate to auditors that they're doing all the things right. That includes their vendors. Okay, if you're a vendor to one of those companies, you have to be ready to be audited also. Okay, and you can't just say, oh, I've got a firewall and some antivirus in place. That's not going to cut it. And what would happen is you probably lose your client. So we want to be prepared for that ahead of time. Most breaches that we also come across new clients sometimes when they've already had a breach. Most breaches occur to firms where they thought IT was managing cybersecurity. So again, big takeaway, IT should not be in charge of your cybersecurity. They are an integral part of it, but they should not be in charge of it. Questions for your attorney. So if you're going to go out and talk to hopefully you have an attorney for your firm, or even if you're a law firm, you probably have outside counsel. What laws and regulations govern the confidential information that I, being the owner of a firm, that I have access to? Particular verticals, such as manufacturing, like Tom works with, are going to have things like DFARS, okay? Don't get thrown off by all the acronyms. Medical stuff, you've probably heard of HIPAA or high tech. Everybody has some regulations they need to comply with. If you think that you don't, even California has a definition of reasonable security, okay? And so you need to know what that is and be prepared, and you want to align yourself with the correct framework so that if you're audited, you can show that you've demonstrated reasonable security or however that particular regulation defines it. So what am I legally obligated to do if my client's information is breached? That's a question for your attorney. I will tell you this, if you do business, any state you do business in, and if you have enough records that are breached, you have to do notifications with each state's individual attorney general's office, okay? What is your involvement in, our incident response plan? Ask your attorney this. They want to have, excuse me one second. There we go. You want to make sure you've got attorney-client confidentiality set in place. You want to think about that ahead of time. You want to have a fully fleshed out incident response plan. Some of it will be with your attorney. Most of it will be with your information security department or outsourced firm. But you want to make sure that's all planned ahead of time. You pack the parachute before you hop out of the plane, not check it after you've hopped out of the plane. So are you prepared to work with us if we have a breach? Another question for your attorney. Questions for your insurance agent. Sometimes I hear people say, well, I've got cyber insurance. Why do I need to worry about any other protections? I don't know about you. I've got car insurance and I still wear my seatbelt. I still drive carefully, and I still want to avoid an accident because it's going to cost me time and money and possibly bodily damage if I'm in a car accident. Same thing for your firm with cyber crime. You don't want to say, well, I've got insurance and therefore I don't need to worry about anything. Insurance is a very integral part of your security plan, but it should not be your security plan. So, one, do I have cyber liability coverage? You should ask your property casualty insurance agent about this. Two, what is excluded from my policy? Does it cover remediation to eliminate how the hacker got in? Okay. Most policies will do that. Some will do that. Some will only cover forensics, which means figuring out what happened, notifying your client, and legal expenses. Some of them won't even help you remediate how the hacker got in. Does it cover ransoms that are paid? So that's a really important one to ask about. So most policies do not, but if it does, is it only in US currency or will it also cover ransoms paid in Bitcoin? Okay, why would I care about that? Most cyber criminals are out of the country and they want you to pay them in Bitcoin. So if they insist on that and your insurance only covers it if it's paid in US currency, then they're not going to cover the ransom. Okay, very, very big difference. You want to make sure and get all these questions ironed out this way. I do recommend actually having your attorney review your cyber liability policy and asking these kind of questions for you. Most policies will exclude the following, and these are also good questions to ask your insurance agent. They're going to exclude lost profits from downtime. I don't think I've ever seen one that covers that. They're going to exclude future lost profits from damage of your reputation of your firm. they're going to exclude loss of firm value due to theft of intellectual property. So if you've got intellectual property and you're a candy manufacturer and suddenly you've got your recipes everywhere out on the internet, guess what? People are going to copy your recipes and they're going to probably compete with you and try to sell you the same kind of product for less money. Okay? And they're rarely going to cover betterment to improve your IT systems to protect against another cyber attack. So these are all things you want to ask your insurance agent. I just want to check, how am I doing on time? Okay. So, sorry, one second. Okay, doing good.
You're doing good.
How big of a risk is cybercrime for small and medium-sized businesses? Okay, so my first slide's on ransomware, where I'm going to show you some other things that'll be interesting. So 70% of all breaches are caused by outsiders, and these are all affecting, by the way, why do they affect small and medium-sized businesses? Most SMBs spend less on cybersecurity per employee than a larger firm, okay? And it really does matter, okay? So they don't have, we're going to talk later about a good offense. They don't have a good offense. They're just going to play defense. And they also they're spending less, and they also don't have the dedicated objectivity of an outside firm or an outside department, a separate department, or et cetera, monitoring and figuring out and making sure that IT is measuring what the plan is, or even having a plan. So SMBs are a huge, huge target for cybercrime. They have per dollar of revenue and per employee, they often have so much more intellectual property and or information that can be stolen, again, per person or per dollar of revenue. So 70% of all breaches were caused by outsiders to SMBs. 84% of breaches were financially motivated. These are like tracking the last 2 years. 43% of those breaches are attacks on web applications. And you think, well, I don't really use any web applications. I got my servers here. Well, what if you have hosted email, Microsoft Office 365? That is definitely, by the way, that is unbelievably attacked. You would not believe how high the statistics are on that. Because out of the box, Microsoft Office, they sell it to make it super easy to set up. I'm sorry, Office 365. They sell it to make it really easy to set up and get your hosted email up there or get your SharePoint information up there. The same thing that makes it easy also makes it very much at risk. So those things have to be, you have to have a plan on how to protect those assets up there. Microsoft is not going to do that for you. They give you a lot of tools to do it, but that does not mean they're going to do it for you. And then 27% of malware incidents can be attributed to ransomware. So you're a big target if you're an SMB. I want to show you a couple other slides about this. So 60% of all small businesses go out of business 6 months after a cyber attack. So that's really a really high statistic. Okay, the average cost of a data breach for a small to medium-sized firm is about $150,000. Right, that's a lot of money, and a lot of that is not covered by your cyber insurance because we just talked about the things that would not be covered. And that average cost, by the way, is not looking at reputation. It's not looking at your downtime. It's looking at actual cost to rebuild things or notify clients. 54% of all small and medium-sized businesses have no plan in place to deal with a cyber attack. Again, if you don't have a parachute already packed and checked and double-checked before the attack happens, that's where you're going to end up in the 60% of businesses that go out of business. This needs to be done ahead of time. 76% of all small and medium-sized businesses in the U.S. reported a cyber attack within the last 12 months. That's 3/4 of all the SMBs out there. Now, by the way, there's probably a higher statistic because a lot of them don't report it. 50% of all cybercrime is targeted at small businesses. So it's not all the Targets or Equifax or whatever. It's because smaller businesses usually have not, don't usually have a plan for this, and they haven't dedicated the right amount of resources towards it. Of businesses with less than 1,000 employees that have been hacked, 85% of them don't even know it. So there's a thing in cybersecurity called dwell time with an attack. The average dwell time is how long a hacker is in your network before they do anything or before you see them do anything. The average dwell time is 272 days. That's like 3/4 of a year. And remember, it's average. So there's a lot that are a lot less, and there's a lot that are a lot longer. So this is professional crime. It's organized crime. They're going to be doing reconnaissance on you first. They might be disabling your backups before they do a ransomware attack. They might be trying to mine all your data first and then do a ransomware attack. So just because you don't see anything happening has no correlation with whether or not you've been unbreached or not. How would you know if you've been breached? If someone was logged in, some of these slides are a little small, hard to see. These are from a monitoring system that we often use. If someone was logged in as you in 2 places at once, how would you know? How would you know if someone's logged into your hosted email from LA, but also from Madagascar or Russia or wherever? Okay, you need to be able to know that, and also whether it's coming from a computer, a phone, a tablet, whatever. How would you know if a bad actor logged into your email from a computer in Russia? Okay, you want to know all logins from all locations. How would you know if your servers are being attacked? So this is a slide that's showing a particular IP address. They're doing, and they have a bad reputation. That means on the internet. There's actually ways to measure reputation. It's coming from South Korea. Destination host, this is a fake IP address, but this is like would be an IP address like for your network. And the destination country would be you. But how would you know if they're being attacking your passwords? How do they know if you've got everybody rushed to get everybody to work at home quickly with COVID? I see so many insecure remote access method setup, and if you don't know, someone is constantly hitting your, let's say you've got the way that they get into either a weak VPN or no VPN, and they're trying to get in, and they're using a supercomputer to like just hammer away at this for different combinations of usernames and passwords. They will get in eventually, okay, unless you have the right safeguards in place. But if you don't know that they're attacking that, how would you even know which thing to go and handle first to protect yourself? Kind of like not knowing if someone's getting inside your outside gate and getting all the way up to your front door and then trying to lock. How would you know if someone was doing reconnaissance scans in your network? You need to be able to know that on a real-time basis, okay? This was like kind of referred to this earlier. If someone was trying to guess your passwords, the number of characters of password, I'm kind of a nerd, so it shows how quickly a computer can guess your password if it's numbers only, upper or lowercase, mixed, another mix with numbers, and then other symbols added. But if it's 3 characters, you can guess it instantly, okay? You can get down to where even at 8 characters, some of them can be guessed instantly, some of them just take a few minutes, etc. Having the right combination of things, even on your password policy, can make this so much longer. It would be unrealistic that someone could get in. Excuse me. So Tom asked some really great questions of me to get ready for this, and this shows that he thinks about probably how to market. He's probably better at marketing this stuff for myself than I am. And he asked me some really great questions. One of them was, often the best defense is a good offense. What's the good offense in cybersecurity? So one of the things you want to do is you want to arm yourself, okay? And I use that acronym. We actually trademarked it. Excuse me. The first thing you want to do is you want to assess. That's the most important thing you do. How can you solve a problem if you can't assess where you are and what you're doing? So you want to assess, you want to identify your vulnerabilities, you want to assess review all your information security policies and technologies, and you want to determine a measurable, objective security maturity level. That does not mean someone goes, hey, yeah, we're pretty secure. Sure, boss, we're doing great. Don't worry about it. We got a new firewall. None of that is measurable, and it's also not against the commonly accepted framework. So we want to pick a common. We're going to talk about how you pick one in a minute, and then you want to get a measurable, defined security maturity level. I like to do it on a scale of 0 to 5, and we're going to see. And you want to find out where you are and where you need to be. Remediate. After you figure that out, I recommend that you remediate all these vulnerabilities that you found and all the policies and technologies you don't have in place that you need to be addressing if you want to, increase your security maturity level. So you want to remediate. You want to get a roadmap and a budget for doing your cybersecurity right. You want to also have project planning to make sure the remediation is happening and someone's holding your IT team members accountable and also the security team accountable. You want to make sure that you've got a defined security strategy. It cannot be, hope is not a strategy. And I run across so many firms where they by just saying, oh, I hope we're doing okay. Gosh, it's just, I can't get my arms around it. It's too big. I hope we're doing okay. That's not going to help you in the time of crisis. And then you want to identify and assign your security team roles and make specific people or teams accountable for specific roles and tasks. And you want to manage this ongoingly. You want to have regular team meetings. You want to review security reports. You want to review key security metrics, so it should all be measurable. Okay, you want to review current attacks, respond to attacks. So all these things put together is a good offense. Otherwise, it's just you're going to be scrambling and you're going to be trying to figure out if your parachute was packed correctly after you're already outside the plane. Let's talk a little bit about how you pick a standard. I'm looking at my time here. Let's talk about how you pick a standard or a commonly accepted framework. So there's something in the United States called NIST, and it stands for the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So it's a big government thing that was funded, and it's a non-regulatory agency of the United States Department of Commerce. And so they have spent billions of dollars figuring out what you should be doing to protect yourself from a security standpoint. So again, you don't just go ask your IT guy, and the IT guy, and also me. Neither one of us should be just coming up with our own plan for you that's not based on a commonly accepted framework. Let's benefit from what this large organization has already done for you. They have published an amazing set of standards that you should be aligning yourself with. Now, so in good news, they publicize a framework you can align your firm with to measure your cybersecurity. The bad news is there's over 500 controls. Each of them has 10 to 20 subcontrols. So that's 5,000 to 10,000 controls. How would you ever get your arms around that? It's pretty impossible. But I will tell you what it's intended for, and then I'll tell you how to get your arms around that. So the NIST 800 cybersecurity framework is all about identifying everything that could be possibly be a risk, then protecting everything. Okay. This is all proactive work. If you look at my mouse down at the bottom, okay, then we want to start worrying about detecting, responding, recovering, and that's the reactive side. Most IT, without a proper framework that you're aligning yourself with, just start with either usually just do respond and then try to recover, or they might have some detection things in place, but certainly not enough to protect you correctly. But you can minimize the attacks by doing the proactive work. So I want to really stress that. Excuse me. So let's talk a little bit about that 5,000 to 10,000 subcontrols to get our arms around. It sounds pretty impossible. I wouldn't want to tackle it. So what I usually recommend is pick a framework that's going to be manageable for you. So there's another organization, nonprofit organization called the Center for Internet Security. Our firm is actually a member of it. Its mission is to figure out of all those 5,000 to 10,000 subcontrols from NIST, which of those controls would have prevented the most breaches. So imagine you're keeping a running tally for 2 years, and you're saying every single breach is reported. You have this huge group of scientists and cyber experts, and they're going to go figure out exactly which one of those NIST controls in that framework would have prevented this specific type of breach. You take all that data, you sort it and rank it by what would have prevented the most breaches to the least breaches. They will actually publish the top 20. So now you're down from 500 to 10. They do have sub-controls, but at least you're down to 20, not 10. You're down to 20 controls. And those 20 controls, they're even ranked. Number one's better than number 20. So number one would have prevented the most breaches of last year reported in the last 2 years. So you want to do number one first, then number two, et cetera. If you do the top 6, you can prevent either 84 or 85% of all known types of breaches. If you do all 20, you can get up to 95%. You notice it's not 100%, unfortunately. So I highly recommend you do this. By the way, California holds every firm and business responsible for having reasonable security. And they're intentionally a little bit vague, but they define reasonable security as complying with the Center for Internet Security's top 20 critical controls. I know it's a mouthful, but that's what I'm talking about right here. So, So if you could go, if you want to pick a framework and you don't know you don't have a specific one for your industry, I would highly recommend you do the Center for Internet Security's top 20 critical controls. You can Google it. I could also, Tom, if you want me to send out a list of them, I can do that when we send out the slides. So let's talk about a little bit about, I've kind of bombarded you with a lot of stuff, and it sounds like I hear often this is something that wasn't a line item on my budget. I don't know what to do about this. So this was a great question. And by the way, I would love to take credit for this question. This came from Tom, not from me. So he was like, where's the opportunity with cybersecurity? So it was kind of a brilliant question from him because it looked at something that everybody else might consider as like, this is an extra expense. And Tom turned it around, because this is what he does for a living, and said, how could I make this into an opportunity? Okay, so he wanted me to answer the question, so I had to think about it. And where's the opportunity with your cybersecurity? So this is the answers I came up with are, and we often talk to our clients about these things, but I don't often package it as an opportunity. So now I'm going to start doing that. Thank you, Tom. So one, you want to obviously invest in your cybersecurity, protect your firm's intellectual property. You want to protect your money because the breaches are expensive, remediation is expensive. You want to also protect your reputation, though. That's something that's really hard to put a dollar figure to, but it does have a dollar value. And you want to be able to confidently secure a new business. You don't want to go in and be going after that Fortune 500 company or Fortune 1000 company and trying to go play with the big boys and then have them ask you questions about your security, and you're like, let me have you talk to my IT guy. You're going to lose the business like that. They don't play that way. So you want to be able to turn this around, make it into your investment in cybersecurity into an opportunity. You want to be able to differentiate your firm with existing clients to boost retention. Okay, so it costs so much money to get a new client, and it takes so much time and effort, and you can lose a client like that. You have one breach, and it's going to could be possibly devastating. Okay, and your client might say, I'm not willing to put up with this. I don't, how are you going to prove to me this won't happen again? And if you can't prove it, you don't have a measurable way of proving it, they're going to go to the next firm that can. So this could help you a lot with your retention. It can also differentiate your firm with your prospects so that your competitors are disqualified from consideration. What I mean by that is often it's great to have a measured plan online. You can prove to an auditor alignment with a particular plan. But there's actually if you've ever heard of a SOC report, these are put out by CPAs. There's actually a new SSAE 19 cybersecurity SOC audit that is specific to only cybersecurity, and it can be for any size firm, okay? What that does is it specifically certifies that you have aligned yourself with those top 20 critical controls or whichever other framework that we need to align you with, okay, for your particular vertical. So you could walk in, see a prospect, and talk to them, and you're going for these customers that are concerned about it. And I would say to that prospect, so let me, who else are you looking at? Oh, we're looking at some other firms, et cetera. That's great. I think that's wise to do that. So I'm curious, which framework are these, other firms you're looking at? Which ones are they complying with? And do they have a SOC 19 report to certify that they're going to be protecting your data with a, alignment with this framework? And they can show you they've got all these things in place, not only one time, but on an ongoing basis. So by you asking that question or even suggesting them, I would really suggest that you get everyone's SOC report, like assuming that they have it, okay? Because most of them won't have it. So you're going to disqualify a lot of your competitors just by asking that question of the prospect, all right? You want to educate your prospects and clients on only doing business with firms that have that verified information security plan in place. That could be huge for retention and also huge for getting new prospects. So again, those are put out by CPAs. I can refer you to a firm that does that. We actually have a partnership with a firm that does that here in town. And so anyway, in summary, so we can leave time for questions here. So cybersecurity, it's kind of a big deal. I like to be silly sometimes. With the ever-changing threat landscape, cybersecurity is swiftly becoming a major business driver for any size company or firm, okay? You cannot ignore it anymore. A lot of firms tell me, I feel perfectly safe, I'm fine. Organizations like NIST and CIS have provided a very cost-effective way for you to prevent 95 to 98% of the reported breaches. That's that CIS top 20 critical controls we talked about, which again, I can also send out if you want. And then free cybersecurity, it is taking a policy-first approach. You'll be able to get buy-in from leadership, and it solves business problems. This is a business problem, not a technology problem, okay? Managing risk is a business problem, Okay, just like you manage risk from competitors and you manage risk if you do business overseas, you manage currency risk, etc. This is a business problem to manage risk. You do this by arming yourself. Remember, they assess, remediate, and manage. So I'll finish with how do you get started. Again, this is the assess, the remediate, the manage that I try to I probably hammered in too much, but I cannot stress enough the importance of the first step to solving a problem is assessing where you are and what you're doing and what risk you've got. Okay, so that's the very, very first step. After you do that, then you can come up with a remediation plan and also a plan for how to manage all this stuff. So I've talked a lot. I've talked pretty quickly. I often do that. So do we have any questions that have come in already?
So while we give people a chance to let us know that they've got questions, I've got 4 and I'm happy to alternate them with other folks.
Sure.
Is there such a thing as being adequately prepared in the face of the human factor? I mean, for years we've talked about, leaving people would send emails with quote, supposedly the attachment is everybody's salary and everybody is a monkey. They want to know what's behind, the peel and the banana. So they open the file and so on. Is there really such a thing as being adequately prepared?
Okay, so the answer is, and people hate this answer, first of all, there's not one magic bullet to do it. I know you didn't specifically ask that, but I often get that question around that. So is there something I can do to prevent all my users from doing all this stuff? There's not one thing. There are definitely a combination of things that can prevent most of those types of things from happening, okay? There is software that you can put in. And by the way, I'm not advocating go out and buying any types of software that I mentioned. Doing those alone is like locking the front door but not locking your windows, okay? It's everything. Your cybersecurity has to be a holistic plan, thought about from the top up, and then you work your way down to the tools are like the last thing, okay? So with that in mind, there are definitely things that we can put in place. This thing's called data loss prevention that can prevent you from, I was talking to a client the other day, and we just put in a data loss prevention system, a warning system for them so they could see who was doing it before they actually shut it down. They had no idea that their their personnel were sending, they do a lot of, they're a vendor for a lot of the studios. And they had no idea that they were sending all this payroll information with people's social security numbers, et cetera, to all these different studios for all the contractors that they had done this work for them. That's personally identifiable information. That is illegal to do. Okay, you're liable for that. They had no idea that was even happening. So one, you want to do it through education and training, but you also want to have some things in place that would also say, it's kind of like that little button on the stove that says, lock, so your children don't go up and touch the hot stove, et cetera. It's the same kind of thing. You're still going to educate your kids. Don't touch the hot stove, you're going to get hurt. But you also would like to have some other safety locks in place if possible to prevent more of that. That's one example. There's things that you can put in place. We'll do the same kind of safety locks for going to new domains. Like a lot of cyber criminals set up fake domains in combination with a phishing campaign where you click on something. And those domains are usually pretty new, like within 2 to 3 days. There's ways to actually prevent anyone from going to a brand new domain. There's ways to prevent you from going to any domain that has a bad cybersecurity reputation. And these are actually things that are measured and monitored 24/7 by outside services. So long-winded answer as usual for me. There are things you can definitely put in place. Again, please, it's part of a holistic plan, but through training and also some of the things I talked about, which would be part of your plan, you can greatly reduce that to something that's very, very manageable.
Great. Jeff Johansson, you've got a question. Go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, David, a question and a comment. So I am a property and casualty insurance agent, and I think your questions regarding the insurance are spot on. I think another issue that I see in the insurance policies you may want to also add is that the policy picks up malware that was installed before the policy effective date.
That's a great point. I know that, but I didn't say that, and that's a really good point to point out.
Yeah, you brought it up that, it could have been in there for a year or what have you, and it's sitting there just kind of doing its thing and monitoring, but the attack doesn't happen until today. And your policy was effective yesterday, and is there coverage or not if that happens?
Do you, and you pronounce your name Jeff, right?
Correct.
Jeff, do you sell cyber insurance? You said you do, right?
Yes.
That's great. Yeah, I'd love to visit with you some more separately, because that's a great point. I'm going to update my slide, by the way. Thank you. And but I'd like to learn more about what you do. We always we refer a lot of business out to cyber insurance agents, and I like to give them a choice of people to go to. So maybe we can set up a time to talk also.
Okay, and then a question with regards to an assessment. I agree that it's really important. What is a range of price for an assessment? I mean, are we looking at a $50,000 bill, a $100,000 bill, or $20,000 bill?
We charge $5,000 for most SMBs. It's more expensive only if you're a really large company. Like we have one client that's a food manufacturer that has, they've got like 25 locations around the world. That's not going to be $5,000. But for most SMBs, it's going to be around $5,000.
Thank you very much. Great.
It's sometimes more with other ones. I try to not overprice it because I really want people to at least take the first step and figure out where they are.
Got it. Great presentation.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And by the way, if you go out and look for an assessment, make sure that you get, with your assessment, you're going to want to get a security roadmap to get you, well, if you want a numeric value of where you are, there's Center for Internet Security. We measure against their standard usually, unless you have a specific vertical that's different like DFARS or HIPAA. And we try to give you a grade that they've come up with, not us, from 0 to 5. And I want to, it's so funny. Well, we always start the assessment with, we explain the process, I explain the grading system. And I always ask people, so where do you think you are? I'd say majority of people go, oh, I'm probably a 2 or a 3. We're definitely not a 5. I would say the majority of firms measured against that framework that we didn't make up, come back at less than a 1. Okay, like 0.29, 0.35. A good one might be 0.95. So it's really important to assess where you are and understand where you are as a first step. So anyway, thanks for your question.
David, there's probably some things that businesses can institute while they're getting their audit and everything else. It occurs to me that having their accounting department have flags set up so that it's a policy. You call any customer 48 hours after a payment is past due with an explanation that you're always checking on cybersecurity. It's not, okay, where's our money, but that you're checking in just to double check that they didn't in fact already transmit a payment and have it go awry.
So interesting. I've never heard that approach to call accounts receivable. I love it because one, if you've ever done accounts receivable, it's not always fun. And that's a great reason to get someone on the phone. Yeah. And so I love that one. And plus you could do it again and again and again because you're always constantly checking on that. So I love that. And we do recommend, that's a great example, Linda, thank you. A great example of, this starts at the top. A lot of this stuff is policy driven and it's not always technology. So it includes, good cybersecurity includes people, processes, and tools, okay? So what you're talking about is some process, okay, that also affects people. So I highly recommend that. I also, you always read about this stuff and you always think, who could fall for this stuff? And then someone or you fall for this stuff. And there's like, I cannot tell you how many, we've got big law firm clients and they're afraid to call their boss. They get a notification, I need to wire you this money, or I'm closing on a new house, wire this escrow for me, I'm in trial, don't bother me. And they do it. So they don't have a policy, or they don't even have the culture to where it's acceptable and in fact required, so that empowers the person who's kind of stuck in the middle and says, pick up the phone and verify it. We will not do any wire transfers without a voice, verification where you initiate calling them, okay, with a number that you already had, not a number that was provided to you in an email. Yeah. So that's a great example of one of many things that we would want to put into your information security policies and processes.
I have 2 final questions. I'm looking to see if anybody else is indicating they've got a question. So you mentioned VPNs. Do VPNs always, in fact, provide protection? I think about home-based computer users. I'm familiar with VPNs and I don't even use them. I only use them when I travel, but I'm curious, if I had a VPN turned on all the time, is that giving me true security?
Absolutely not. So And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. So VPN, for those of you who don't know what it means it's basically a virtual private network. What you're doing is, imagine that instead of sending a letter, it's the difference between sending a letter and a postcard. A postcard is something that's unencrypted. Anyone can read it. I'm delivering the mail. Oh, wow, I didn't realize I was getting invited to a birthday party. You can hand out the postcard, okay? And a letter is something where I can look at it. I might be able to, it's from so-and-so and it's to so-and-so. That's probably, hopefully, all the information I can see if it's in a sealed envelope, okay? So VPN it's sealing the information that's in that envelope, okay? However, it doesn't change the information that's in that envelope, okay? So if I was going to mail you some, what's that? Oh gosh, I can't remember. What's that chemical, that powdered chemical that they always like look for at the White House and other places that is dangerous? Thank you, ricin. So if I were going to mail you ricin, I won't do this, Linda, I promise. If I was going to mail you ricin in a sealed envelope, guess what? It would be encrypted and no one could look at the contents of it while it's in transit. That's what a VPN does. It is not going to protect you when you open it, okay? So another problem with VPN, so if something bad is sent through it, it's still going to be bad. It's just going to be protected in transit until it gets to you, okay? The next thing about a VPN is, if not configured properly, and I would say probably 95 or 98% of the ones I see are not configured properly, it actually joins two networks, okay? And so what that means is it's joining. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've got kids or you do shopping or other things we won't talk about on your home computer, et cetera, then as the IT director for the firm, do you want everybody's home computer? Remember, at a home computer, you're subject to anyone else on that home network. So it could be your kids playing video games. It could be anybody doing anything on your home network. Now that network is in most cases joined to your firm network also. So I'm not saying don't do a VPN, because the VPN does prevent traffic from being sniffed and it's going to keep it encrypted in transit, but it has to be properly configured and meet certain standards.
Right. So here's the final one. I suspect
Sure.
everybody wants to know. So if they get an email that's a ransom notice, what are they supposed to do? Who's supposed to negotiate with the hackers?
Okay, so do they have ransomware? So are you saying that in this example, they've actually have things are encrypted?
They get an email saying, you don't know me, but I've hacked you and I have your entire client database and blah, blah, blah. In that moment, since we've said virtually no businesses are adequately set up with their security yet, they receive this email, this threat. What are they supposed to do next? Like, who's supposed to, quote, respond and negotiate with the hackers?
One, it would not be IT, okay? The common is, because you're used to getting support from them, and IT is extremely necessary and useful and great, but that's not their job to do that. That's why, and I know I love to overuse an analogy, by the way. It's not a great thing, but that's why you want to pack that parachute and check it and triple check it before you hop out of the plane. So at the time that you've had that, if you don't have any way of checking to see if you actually have any kind of breach, then you're going to have to probably go with the assumption that they're telling the truth. But even then, you don't have an incident response plan. So, and we're literally talking seconds and minutes can make a big difference. So who do I contact? Well, you need to have an incident response plan where you know that you go to a particular person. It's usually a person at C-level or a business owner. They have a written plan, hopefully written at this point, if they worked with someone to help develop it. They know when to get their attorney involved. They know whether they should negotiate or not negotiate. They're going to have already understood what's in their cyber insurance, whether it covers the ransomware or not. And so I know, as usual, it's not I don't have a quick answer because it's holistic, but if you've planned adequately in advance, then you will know who to contact, who does what. You don't communicate with them yourself for sure, okay? And you're going to figure out what to do. You also want to know, as part of that, it's not necessarily, the first step is probably not negotiating or even replying. The first step is isolating that particular computer. If you think it was something that you did, like if you clicked on a phishing email or something else, or you get the specific email, but you need to be able to know exactly what been breached and what hasn't. And one thing you kind of reminded me of something I forgot to cover. This is from a legal perspective, and also, I guess it affects your insurance also. So it is just as important to know the extent of a breach versus just knowing if you've been breached or not, okay? So there are a lot of circumstances where you do not have to report a breach. There's certain safe harbors for certain data being encrypted in certain ways, et cetera. And if you can prove, not hope, prove that only this was accessed, or, oh yeah, this was accessed, but this other 90% wasn't accessed, then you're going to be in a much better position, okay? And another thing, another part of, sorry, I'm kind of expanding on your question here. Another part of that whole ransomware thing is a properly, a good information security plan is going to include segmenting off your most important information from other parts of your network, okay? Meaning that, so if I have, you know, I'm super rich and I've got, you know, a ton of jewels at my house and I've got bags of cash. I don't, by the way. Don't, and I won't give you my address just in case. But anyway, let's say I do have all that stuff. Then I'm going to want to put that in a safe in my house or a lockbox at a bank in a safe, etc. I'm not going to have it sitting on my living room table so that if someone breaks in the front door, they can get to everything in my whole house. Okay, that's called segmentation in information security. So we want to segment off the most important data from all the other data. Okay, we want to segment off the things, those servers that have that really, really important data away from your printers, away from your VoIP phones, away from all this other stuff that's on your network, because those are all points of possible vulnerability. So part of that plan, again, it's easier to tell you what to do in advance than it is to tell you what to do in that moment, Linda. But if you have a properly defined incident response plan, you'll also know what to do in that moment. But it's a lot of steps, which would, step one would be knowing how to properly isolate what's happening without wiping it also. You also need to be able to, you have to know what to preserve for forensics to prove what you did or didn't have, you know, breached, et cetera. So I kind of rambled there. Did I answer your question?
You did. Thank you.
And probably 5 others, so.
Tom, you're muted.
There we go. Thank you everybody for coming. It's 1 o'clock. We're gonna call it quits. Dave, you were awesome. Thank you so much. There was so much valuable information. Everybody, I'll, you know, feel free to reach out to David and learn more. So, all right.
Thank you, Tom, for the opportunity.
Thank you, everyone.
I appreciate it. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend. Bye.